Hello, my dear audience. Let's talk today about the phrase, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. I'm sure most of you have heard some version or another of this phrase, but very often it's used sort of as a complaint about a politician rather than an analysis of political affairs. A lot of people seem to interpret the phrase to mean, if you have power, you will be tempted to abuse it, and the more power you have, the more tempting that is. And while this is technically true, it's really only a minor point in terms of corrupting effect, and yet it's often treated as the most important aspect of it. I would like us to take a moment to broaden the definition of the phrase a little. There will be several actions that, while not necessarily corrupt in and of themselves, may have corrupting effects, simply in the process of doing your job, even with the most benevolent of intentions. And the presence of inefficiencies, things that slow down your ability to perform competently, will become more and more appealing to skip or work around. For example, the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, the United States still had Senate and congressional votes on whether or not to formally declare war on Japan. It was a landslide vote in favor that was obvious to everyone what the result would be, but it was done anyway. And the idea is that when we have these checks and balances that are sometimes redundant, humoring that and having that bureaucratic process will help protect people from things growing out of control in the cases where it is not redundant, so it's a cost-benefit sort of thing. The system will have some inherent inefficiencies, but humoring those helps protect people in other cases, or that's the idea at least. But imagine how tempting it is to cut corners in order to simply do your job better, or be able to do things efficiently, or exercise benevolent authority, purely with the best intentions and with the best interest of the people at heart. Suppose the year is 2020, and you have come to power as some bureaucrat in an African nation, and another virus crisis occurs, the new virus crisis of 2020, and the World Health Organization and numerous other charities have come up with vaccines and treatments, but want access to your country to go to the various villages and conduct the vaccinations and such. But suppose a local shaman or popular figure that many of the people in one of these regions look up to states that these foreigners are actually coming to do horrible bioweapon experiments and infect people with the virus, and an incident develops where one of these villages throw out some relief aid workers and threaten to kill them if they return. And let's say this village houses your country's most important silver mine. You now have a potentially nasty situation on your hands. If this virus spreads through the village, that may harm any nearby villages, possibly wildlife, and the country's economy by the hindrance it will have on silver production. Maybe you have a trade agreement with a neighbor of silver for food, and they produce a lot of food for you, so if your silver production slows down, some people could go hungry. Not to mention the many children that will be at health risk in this mining village. A lot of other people's lives and livelihoods are in danger by the behavior of the adults of this village. You might argue they don't have a right to endanger other people, but the way they see it, they are defending themselves and their homes and livelihoods from these evil foreigners. They don't see it as endangering anyone else, or even endangering themselves. They don't want you to march in with soldiers and forcefully subject them to horrible, evil World Health Organization viral weapon experiments. The local shaman that has been a leader in this community for years has told them to beware the vaccine, and perhaps he himself even believes it. If you had enough time, you could try to educate these people into understanding and accepting the vaccinations, but maybe this particular virus doesn't give you that luxury. What are you going to do to solve this situation? Are you going to override their democratic self-determination? Are you going to do these people's thinking for them, since they're too ignorant to do it themselves? Perhaps you can bribe the shaman into changing his tune, maybe plant some evidence to blackmail him if he doesn't accept the bribe. The offer you can't refuse is such a tried and trusted method. Think of how many people's lives could be saved if you don't roll the dice on possible food shortage issues from the silver production. Think of how tempting it will be to solve this situation by a quiet and mutually beneficial means like bribery. But these still require bribery or blackmail, assuming you don't want to forcefully vaccinate people against their will and go down that lovely road of possibilities. You may not have the time to educate these people on why hacking the heads off of relief aid workers is a bad idea, but they'll listen to the shaman if you offer him a bribe or a bullet. So you see, my dears, the point I'm trying to get across is not that having a position of authority or responsibility is going to tempt you to abuse power for personal gain, although that is a risk, but in the process of doing your job, doing it well, doing it competently, doing it to benefit the most people, finding beneficial solutions to problems, doing it in the true best interest of the people you represent, may put you in a situation where you must do corrupt or corrupting actions simply in the course of doing your job. You're doing the thinking of these people for them by bribing their mouthpiece, with the best intentions to save lives, for the best outcome for everyone, but it still requires of you bribery or blackmail or even more colorful solutions if you don't want to go for those. So when people say power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, I think it would be a little more accurate to phrase it as power and responsibility are corrupting. We don't live in a world where you're guaranteed a completely ethical, completely beneficial to all parties solution to every single problem. Sometimes you will have that luxury, but sometimes you won't. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.